y'all. Welcome to the first lecture. In this lecture, I am just going to kind of go over what we're going to talk about this semester and kind of like the major themes for the course for art appreciation for the most part. And so this class, like typically an art appreciation class, you'll start with a lecture discussion depending on, I guess, how large the class is, being that this is extremely large class. Obviously, this is more of a lecture format, but about what is art. So, but in this class, like I've kind of wanted to like break down how like the typical art appreciation class was like made up. So instead, I'm thinking about like what isn't art, because like can anything be art? And I want y'all to kind of break down those boundaries about like defining art. And when you go to a museum and you think, oh my gosh, that's so easy, I could do that, that's not art. Or well, I'll really get you to challenge your ideas. Like, does it have to have like a product to be art, or is it just because it is aesthetically pleasing? Like, can it just be like an activity that expires? What about ephemeral art? So we'll talk about all these kind of things. Talk about like, whatever y'all think about, like, and this is, what is art is going to be your first discussion. So yeah, just kind of get the ball rolling. So yeah, here we go. So obviously in most art classes, you're gonna start out with a conversation about, well, I would say we're gonna talk about like the elements and principles, but that's not like our major themes. That's just like necessary. But, you always have to talk about, your drawing, your painting, your 2D foundations. This is probably, like, where art was built. It's probably where a lot of people, like, whenever you think of art, that's what you think of. Because, like, from the time that you were able to hold a pencil, you were probably scribbling on something, or a crayon or whatever. So, at that point, that is whenever the 2D foundations, drawing, and printmaking. Here are some examples of the artists that we're going to talk about. One of the things that is going to be a little bit different about this class compared to maybe a lot of other art appreciation classes is I am only going to focus on contemporary artists who, for the most part, are currently living. I'm doing that because, like, why do you really want to know about art that's just made by a bunch of old dead white guys? I prefer to, like, talk about art that's, relevant to the contemporary time that we're living in. These are artists that are making stuff in response to what's happening now. And it kind of shows you what is art right now. And, like, ultimately, haven't y'all all at some point had, your Van Goghs, your Monets? I have all the books up there. I was an art history major. But sometimes it's nice to learn about some new stuff. So here we have Takashi Murakami, and he is a Japanese artist who blends kind of like a cartoon and manga, like high and low kind of style art, and to blur the lines between high and low art and like pop culture. Y'all probably have seen some of his work around. He did the cover of Kanye West's Graduation album. Is it just Graduation, or is it that some of the names, the titles are out of order in my head, but I'm pretty sure it was the Graduation album that he did. But he has like this pop culture stuff, and you see a lot of these like flowers in his works. I think he's like done stuff with like Supreme even. And over here we have LaToya Hobbs, and she is a Black female artist, and she combines printmaking and lino cut with painting and drawing, really doing a lot of mixed media. So we'll talk about her. She's an example of, and here this one is called Prosper, to Do Well, Succeed, or Thrive. So that is an example of one of her works, but we'll get into her works later. Another theme that we're going to kind of like start the semester off with, after we go through our like basics of the definitions and stuff, whatnot, is art is entertainment. I'm sure that everybody throughout quarantine, which is literally an entire year, y'all been watching a lot of Netflix. Unfortunately, I'm running out of new things to watch. So art is entertainment. What would we be doing like while we're sitting at home some of y'all probably have had COVID quarantine. Y'all probably watch a bunch of Netflix. So art is entertainment. And here, this is another example where, of art, where art and entertainment collide. If y'all know the Beyonce Hold Up video where she's like swinging, the bat, crushing the cars. So there's like a ton of references in that, but in one particular, example is, from contemporary art, but this is like back in the 80s, I want to say, maybe. I don't remember. Maybe it might have been more modern art, kind of like the beginning of video art. But Pippi Risks. So it's like a contemporary art video piece that Beyonce was appropriating from, but appropriating in a like inspiration way, not in like a cultural appropriation way, because those are two different things, and we will talk about that. But yeah. So as we talk about art is entertainment, you know, kind of guessed it. I assume that we're going to talk about photography, film, and video art, because that is a lot of what we get how we get some entertainment. I mean, TikTok, that's a form of video art, or, you know, however you want to look at it. So here we have some examples of like some artists that we might talk about during our photography week. So Haruki Kawaguchi. I practiced that so many times. Haruki Kawaguchi, and he is a Japanese photographer, and I don't know if y'all like follow Vice or anything, but they even did an article about this, and I left it on there in like Trendland. But he takes these photographs and he like vacuum seals like all of this space, but ultimately he has to take the photograph in about 10 seconds because he vacuum seals the people, and then he has like to take like 2 or 3 shots and then get out, like cut them open. So yeah, and it's about like claustrophobia and like living in the city and stuff. So he kind of like brings these abstract ideas to life in photography in an interesting way. You know, different from whenever you would just like, oh, I'm just going to take a picture of like that pretty sunset. So, you know, it's really an interesting piece, I think. But so yeah, we'll talk about stuff like this. Also, as I mentioned about TikTok over here, and Vice, where do we find a lot of our art in these days? It's on the internet. And art in the age of the internet, like, it's been a thing for a while, like net art, whenever the computer first started, but now it's taken an entirely different turn because of things like Instagram, and like you can buy and sell art online. So the world of art on Instagram and the digital aspect of art, so it kind of goes with photography, it's just like opening up entirely new possibilities for artists and creators. So this is a work by Michele. It's French, and I never know which ones I'm supposed to pronounce in French. Stasi. Social art is like milk, and so this one, it was a piece, like, so I'm sure many of y'all are on Instagram. People are like always creating artworks that are just going on Instagram, and it's kind of like a never-ending cycle, and sometimes it does feel like you're like just putting things out into a void. But like he says, it says up here, expiration tomorrow. So it's talking about the ephemerality. So it means it only lasts for a short period of time of internet art, and how, you know, our attention is so short and it moves on to the next thing. So like, you know, you'll get a lot of likes on my fantastic piece of art that's going to expire tomorrow. So it's a constant like churning out of art. So yeah, and he made this with Photoshop and Illustrator. So it's kind of cool because it looks like it's actually like a 3D object, but it's really just that. All right. So, and with talking about art in the age of the internet, we can't not talk about appropriation. So, appropriation can be a wide range of things depending on how you look at it, like the angle that you come from. So here we have Kehinde Wiley. He is using appropriation from old master paintings, and instead of like, so this was Napoleon leading the army over the Alps, so that actually is a famous painting. But here Kehinde Wiley, he he takes these masterworks, and instead of having, you know, the white guy in it, he has a contemporary black figure seated in the position, and then in the background, like usually like some kind of motif. But he also is the one that did the portrait of Barack Obama. So, you know what I just thought of? I wonder who's going to do Donald Trump's portrait. Isn't that interesting to think about? Okay, so moving on. Sorry about that. So Napoleon leading the army over the Alps. So appropriation could be a wide range of things, and we'll talk about that. And it can go from doing a meme, and in the culture of meme making is just appropriation. It's a remaking, but we will get into that. So obviously, art and the internet, meme making, appropriation, culture jamming. So culture jamming is a lot like appropriation, but it's kind of like whenever you take an image that's very well known and then you create like a new meaning from it, like a pop culture image. So here, Minerva Cuevas. This is Pure Murder from 2003. It's an installation. And here she is speaking about like the practices of like globalization and overproduction and in Colombia, and how Del Monte is like contributing to the murder of people because of like their unstable living wages and all of the stuff that come with. Yeah, it's a lot to get into, and honestly, if I go on, then it's gonna take me forever. So we will talk about Minerva Cuevas, but like I said, culture jam, because you can kind of see Pure Murder, and yeah, this is just an intro. So we're also going to talk about art as confrontation. So art can be very confrontational. You know, maybe you don't think about it that way, and except maybe recently. But art can make us kind of uncomfortable. Art can, you know, call us out. Art can do a lot of different things. So this is a sculpture by Ron Mueck, and it's called A Girl. And, you know, there's a person for scale. So Rob Mueck creates these very lifelike, kind of almost creepy looking sculptures that are like scarily accurate, and they're meant to like confront us with our fears and our different to play with body scale, and yeah, just he does stuff with your unspoken thoughts and feelings and stuff. So yeah, it's just trying to get you to feel, essentially. But there's a lot of this kind of different stuff that's like supposed to like shock you or make you feel something, like this. So sometimes art can be confrontational because it has some like, makes you go, whoa, is that allowed? Is that legal? Is that ethically okay? So we're going to talk about the ethical quandaries in art. So one of the easiest go-tos is Santiago Sierra, and he has this 160 millimeter line tattooed from 2000. So he went to Spain and he paid these prostitutes to, in like heroin, to have a line tattooed across their back. And he's done this with different people, but in this sense, he had a female, so it was, but in the whole sense, it's like he's having it tattooed and they're being paid in something that they're addicted to, and it's like this entirely ethical, like, push and pull there, because like they are consenting and stuff, but it's at the same time, is it like, at what point is too far? Is he taking advantage of these women? And this is something that we'll talk about in the book. That's also in Ways of Looking. So we'll talk about it. So also sometimes art is an event. So art, you know, there are art events, and then the idea of an event is usually something, you know, whenever you go to an event, it's something that happens at one point and then it's over. So what does it mean if art is an event? So that's like Nick Cave sound suits. So you see these on the bottom of like one of the pages of the syllabus. So these are created by Nick Cave, and he has people in them, and we'll talk a lot about this, but ultimately this is a performance, and this is a type of art that is going to last for this time. And yes, you can go see his sound suits in museums, but you won't get the same kind of the eventfulness of this art if you're not seeing it move, because it's called a sound suit because it makes noise. So if you're seeing it in a museum and it's like just static, it doesn't have the same power. The same with, watching these or looking at a picture of these performances by Marina Abramovich versus perhaps being there in person or experiencing it. So the art as performance. So we'll talk about Marina Abramovich. And then art can also be a message. Sometimes art's message is very explicit and direct, and sometimes it is a little bit more muddled. And here is one of the examples of where it is both explicit and muddled, because in the literal sense. So this is by Glenn Ligon, and it says, I do not always feel colored. I do not always feel colored, and it's just overlapped over here. And then it says, I feel most colored when I am thrown against a sharp white background. And it says that over and over again. And then as it goes down, it gets more muddled, and he had printed over it and over it more again. So it's like the message becomes unclear, and yeah, it is it's about he's talking about it's like a collective experience and stuff, and what it feels like, race relations, because he is a African American man creating art. So also activist art. Sorry. So Dred Scott is an activist artist, and he created this flag, and I don't know if y'all would remember the if y'all have seen, y'all aren't old enough to remember, but was it NAACP put out the a man was lynched today every time African American was lynched, in the Jim Crow era and pre-civil rights and stuff. So he recreated this in 2015, and man was lynched by police today. So this is a form of activist art. There's a lot of different forms of activist art, so we'll talk about that. A lot of times activist art has a message, so they kind of go together. Also, socially engaged art. So socially engaged art is kind of what it sounds like. It's art that engages socially with other people, and so this is called Parking Day, and this is originally founded by Rebar in San Francisco, but it's done all over the place now. And the idea, founded in 2005, and the idea is that creating green spaces where otherwise there would be cars, and kind of creating these other green spaces in the city. Think about urban environmental awareness and stuff like that. So what the people do is they rent out a parking spot for the whole day, and then instead of parking a car there, they put down AstroTurf and just create a little park to hang out and to invite people in to come a community. So yeah. And then sometimes art can be participatory, and it also doesn't have a product other than this photo. So Andrew Herzog created this art piece called A Communal Line, and this is at the High, I believe. Yeah, this one is the High, and in Atlanta. So he just told people to show up at a certain time and get in the line, to wear all white, and then get in the line, and then they walked around, and then everybody got a chance to be a line leader. at some point, and you know, they randomly walked. It's a communal line, but they had no goal. So, and it was just photographed via drone. Hold on 1 second. Sorry, someone was at my door. So yeah, they just walk around, and yeah, it's like a participatory art project. So people participated with it. They got like a little like sticker patch, and like some other stuff that said like they participated in this, but there really wasn't like, you know, a product. So, you know, that's something else to think about, like the participatory aspect of art with no product. Also, you know, that brings us to conceptual art, because ultimately, like, if there's no product, sometimes that is very conceptual. Just like this. So Jenny Holzer, she created this art piece called Vigil in 2019 to raise awareness of gun violence, and she projected different quotes from gun violence survivors on the Rockefeller Center in New York. So this one over here says, "We were caught in the crossfire. I was shot with an AK-47. They said it was the wrong place at the right time and to be glad." And then this one says, "I have spent over 12 years living in fear, panic, anxiety, depression, and PTSD unfolding itself inside my mind and body." So, to lighten the mood, so we are also going to talk about art as a joke. So sometimes art is funny. Like, there's no way around that. Like, that's fine. That art can be funny. So here we have Marzino Catalan's comedian, and y'all might have heard of this at like Art Basel a few years ago. Like, the guy just like taped a banana on the wall. It like sold for $100,000, and then another comedian came and ate the banana, or not comedian, another artist came and ate the banana. But it's titled Comedian, you know. Haha. We are also going to talk about street art and graffiti. So here is an example of one of the street artists. If any of y'all are from the Atlanta area, maybe y'all have seen some of her work around, because she had some stuff there. But Tatiana Fazilzadeh. So from her Stop Telling Women to Smile series, and yeah, so it's public art, it's graffiti, like, and we're gonna talk about that line between, like, you know, public commission murals and you know, street art and like vandalism, and how do you decide. And so there's also art as a spectacle. So we're gonna talk about art as a spectacle, you know, public art again. People stop and look at it, you know. Here, Ai Weiwei, the beginning picture was Ai Weiwei, I forgot to mention that part. So here Ai Weiwei created Remembering in 2009 after there was a earthquake in China, and one of the schools collapsed because there wasn't proper infrastructure, and then they said that like it was fine, but ultimately they ended up not finding like 900 and something little children, and they just don't talk about it, and they, like, you know, these children are just like disappeared. So Ai Weiwei created this this large, you know, installation piece with backpacks. Each little square is a backpack representing a child, and I don't remember what it says on there, but you know, talking about remembering the children. And that's also like to call out the government, by the way. Another Chinese, no, this is Japanese, my bad. So another artist that creates installation, but hers are not like outside. Well, some of her stuff is outside, but mostly, you know, infinity rooms. So installations can be in different places. But hers, like infinity rooms, some of y'all might have seen them at the High like a couple years ago. Sorry, my dog's coming in, and he has a cone on his head. And so, yeah, example of installations. And then, you know, when we talk about installations, we'll also talk about sculptures, and sculptures can be a wide range of things, you know, everything from like, you know, statues to like, you know, a little clay sculpture that you make. This is an artist named Levon Jenkins. He creates these really interesting sculptures that he calls 3D paintings, and they're actually made with like armatures layered with paint. So kind of like using unconventional materials. And then we're also going to talk about how art intersects with like identity, like in your cultural history and cultural backgrounds. So Zhang Zhaogang, My Ideal, this is an example of that. So this is both a painting and like sculptures. So it inspired by the Chinese cultural like family revolution, cultural evolution period, where they were like only supposed to have like one kid, and the notion of like identity within like Chinese collectivism, like you either were going like the student route, the military route, the there's a doctor. So there's like a few like different routes, and like you were going one of those. So kind of like saying how there's like no choice there. And then as we talk about cultural stuff, we'll also talk about museums, because that's those like are the places that we consider to be like the housing of our culture, to house our cultural artifacts or whatever. So here is an example, kind of like activist art, but also like calling out the museum, and like politics of representation in the museum, and the problems there that exist. So this is by the Guerrilla Girls. Do women have to be naked to get into the Met Museum? So here they are calling out how the Guerrilla Girls are like a feminist artist collective, and they're calling out like how there aren't like a lot of female artists within the Met at 1989, but like they, you know, they had a lot of nude figures, but yeah. And then to kind of end our semester, or towards the end of our semester, we're going to talk about, that's the end, yeah. We're going to talk about art as meditation, because I like to end on like a light meditative note. And so here's an artist called Do-Ho Suh, and this is called Rubbing Loving. So this is also very similar to your art assignment 1, where you surface test. And he was moving out of his apartment that he had lived in New York for like 20 years, something like that. And before he moved out, he took paper and covered all of the walls and did rubbings of every surface in his apartment. Then took it out and reconstructed it elsewhere. But yeah, so this is kind of like showing the meditative practices of art and how like soothing it can be of how art can be like meditative. And you know, as art and meditative, there's also like the crafting side, because whenever at least I think about meditative practices in art, I love to like sew, and like a lot of people like, you know, crochet or different things like that. Here we have Bisa Butler, and she creates these contemporary quilts that like, these are insanely amazing. Like all of this is quilted. So we're going to talk about like what it means, like, you know, for generations, people haven't really considered like the crafts to be like art with a capital A. You know, like it's, the crafts would be like, you know, pottery and quilting and the soft arts, fiber arts. But who decides what is art and what is craft? So that's what we're going to talk about. And then that's about it. So we're going to, I like to end on the Marcel Duchamp toilet fountain, because I feel like you can't have like a what is art like lecture without doing this. But yeah, so we're gonna get to some of these things, but first, you know, we gotta do like the whole like elements and principles of art, and we're gonna talk about art criticism. But as we get through that, we're gonna talk about all of this stuff, and I'm really looking forward to a fun semester.